Yeah.
Hello and welcome to What Would Jesus Tech? We are a podcast helping Christians imitate Jesus in an artificial intelligence and AI age. I know that AI is a buzzword. We keep talking it on this podcast. It's not the only technology, but it is a pretty important technology. And I was going to push this conversation off until September, but I just wanted to talk to Dan. And this is one of those unique episodes where I not only respect Dan as a thought leader and entrepreneur and an AI startup guru, but he's also a guy who led a small group with me, and we were part of the same church for a while and helped lead a church together for a time. So it's just kind of cool to really that faith and tech world merged together in our friendship. But we haven't caught up in a while, so let's just catch up. Dan, how are you doing?
Actually, really well. And I'm not a guy who typically answers, "How are you doing?" with a good answer, and I feel embarrassed about that sometimes. People will ask me, and I'll say, and I'll just leave it at that. But honestly, really well. God's been really good to us. We've been growing a lot here in Japan instead of at home. I feel like He brought me to the other side of the world in order to have fewer distractions. And nobody's asking for my time during my workday, for example, because they're all asleep. But
yeah, it's interesting. Even just scheduling this call was an issue. I know one of the things on all of our listeners' minds is the answer to this question: are you an AI?
nah. Thankfully, no. It is such a wonderful thing to be a human and to be honestly just known by your creator in a way that something that is a machine cannot be. And the communion we have together too is just, I don't know, you can't even describe that in words sometimes, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's not something to be taken for granted. I think that's one of the things that AI is doing to us now. It's asking us questions about, well, what does it mean to be human, and being able to, hug your child. And that's always been a meaningful thing. But to really recognize, oh no, this is my child that I have a relationship to, unlike any other relationship in the world. There's nothing like a relationship that you have with a child. You have kids too, I know. And it's just different than anything an AI will ever be able to have, on so many levels. What was your reasoning for starting your podcast, Artificial Insights: How to Build an AI Business? It's not a Christian podcast necessarily, because you just talk to CTOs and PMs and different leaders of startups. I've listened to a bunch of the episodes and enjoyed them, and you kind of get into the story side of it. So maybe that's kind of your thought process of what's the story behind starting these AI companies. So yeah, what was the motivation?
Yeah. The strangest part for me was it started with a dream. And I had a dream of being pulled along in like a cart. And on the side, I saw myself standing at a gate. And I had no idea for a long time what it meant. But then I read, I think it's in Jeremiah, where he describes Tyre, I think it is, as standing at the gate of the sea. And like all commerce in the world went through Tyre. And I thought, wow, I really want to know what's happening in AI. So if I want to do that, I want to stand at the gate, see what people are doing as they do commerce, come back in and out, and understand what's happening. Because at the time, people would come out with ChatGPT wrappers and say like, "Look, I made a few $1,000s because you can now upload a PDF to ChatGPT." And of course, the week after, ChatGPT itself would say, "Hey, you can upload PDFs now because it's useful," and that whole business is gone. So the stuff that people were really excited about was stuff that didn't last. And I hate that personally. I'd rather not get excited and disappointed in a week. So it's just something that I wanted to do to get to know what's happening and what matters.
Mm-hmm. So, and it's interesting, that idea of standing at the gate, people coming in and out, doing commerce. You're not doing that to focus on the money that's being exchanged as much as the people who are exchanging and making transactions. what have been the insights that you've gleaned so far in doing the podcast?
Yeah, it's been almost a year now, and I've released, I think it's 19 interviews. And one of the big surprises for me is that you really need to care about how you build the AI and not just what you're doing with it. It feels like in business anyway, you can kind of get this sense that just make a lot of money, just do whatever it takes, and your business will succeed. Especially in venture capital, is that feeling I got, just succeed at all costs. But with AI, you actually really have to care about every single step, everything that goes into it, everything that comes out of it, how the person on the other end is going to interact with it. And that it just is unique, I think, to the current generation of AI where you can emulate text. And there's stories that of people who companies who would replace their entire support department because it's cheaper to let generative AI handle it, and
Mm-hmm.
then would change their tune half a year later because everybody hates it and they'd lose business and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Even the people I interview that do customer support, they say how important it is for the humans to trust it, for that relationship between what the human says and what the AI does to work really, really well.
Yeah,
So,
it's I've been sometimes surprised listening to your podcast, and then you hear someone who's starting this AI company and they're talking about why they're skeptical about AI. It's
yeah.
start an AI company, skeptics welcome, uh, because it's such a beast to manage. It's so complex. So help our listeners understand, how do you make the AI? Like you describe how it's made being so important is that doing the training data, one conception of AI is it's just garbage in, garbage out, quality data in, quality data out. Is it just about the data? Or is it about the training? And then, well, what does that even mean, training? Are you setting goals, iterating upon goals? Or is it about the end use cases where you're focusing on that and the user experience? And maybe it's all three. What are the other things that I'm missing, and what are some of the details that you've learned on how to build AI? Because you used to work at Darwin AI, building an AI company there before it was cool.
Yeah, that's true. I do like to tell people I worked in AI before it was cool. But the the fascinating thing to me is how many companies are built without having to get into how the model itself works. So you say training, and when I talk to people who, especially in consulting, they're like, "I want these things to happen in the model to do these things." I say, "Hold on, that's really expensive. Every time something changes, you have to go and run this expensive engineering process to make those changes update." And there's a whole bunch of things that you have to worry about where maybe like ChatGPT 5 comes out and then suddenly everything you've done is completely out of date. And then what? Are you going to redo your whole months long process to fix it up? Now sometimes it does matter like how the model handles its outputs. That's what training does. It changes the model's outputs. But there's other ways to change outputs too. And most of the time, you really care about um, how the model feels to interact with. Like sometimes ChatGPT itself will say, "Do you like this model's personality?" And it'll give me a thumbs up,
Mm-hmm.
thumbs down. And that can do everything from it's really eager, or it is more easy to direct and will take your correction when like I'm taking a picture and it says, "Hey, this is the translation for this Japanese." And I'm like, "Yeah, you totally misread that. Do it again." And it'll take my feedback. You can tell it not to. Like if you want to manage how the model reacts, you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to go and train it in a different way. You can actually just like change the prompts. So there's that top layer of how the model feels that is actually relatively easy with a couple of prompts, evaluations, and other controls that you can put on top of it. So I know we're getting a little into the weeds here, but the going back to the first point, it has, I think, been very key to most businesses I've talked to really nail that top. How does it feel? Does it say the right thing? if in one case, if it's based off of a memoir from a cancer survivor, does it act like that person would act? And he didn't rebuild ChatGPT. He just took the book, took pieces of it when you talk to it, and said, here's what a good response looks like. Let's make sure that we tell you what a good response looks like and evaluate whether it was a good response before the person who's talking to this cancer survivor ChatGPT bot gets a response at all.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's I find it fascinating just the way that we've created this thing. I referred to it as a beast before, and then it's almost like, okay, we're going to give certain rewards to the beast so that it becomes less beastly. And yeah, and it's interesting that you emphasize the way it feels. Um, and I think some Christians are kind of bothered by that being a priority, but it's what's going to make
Mm.
the product sticky. And that's what you care about as a startup founder. You're like, as do people sign back in to my product on day two or not? Um,
Yeah.
do you do you see a concern in some of these business leaders about the potential for addiction in AI? Like, I think we're so early with AI that the harms aren't clearly established, other than some of the environmental harms or big question harms about job displacement. But I think about the way social media turned into this addiction complex and has negative effects because of that. Do you see business leaders, whether Christian or not, demonstrating concern and awareness about some of the ethical ramifications of AI?
Yeah. I think there are two kinds of concerns I see. And one I'm just going to call science fiction, because you can find Elon Musk tweeting about how AI is going to replace humanity in the next year or whatever. I think those are things you shouldn't pay attention to, so I'm not going to talk much more about them. They're speculation that has been proven wrong for decades. So
Hmm.
we'll just leave it at that. I don't think anybody can predict the future. But the other kind of concern is I saw recently even Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, or I think he's the current chairman, um, he made a comment on how the current version of ChatGPT is too sycophantic. Like it will continually praise you. It will make you want to come back and use it, like you mentioned, because it feels good to use it, because it says, wow, that's a great insight, or that's a great question, or like it'll tell me things that are like, that's totally a good idea, and then correct me right after. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
a really bizarre mix, I think, in order to feel good using it. And
Mm-hmm.
even though he said, yeah, it's too psychophantic, I don't get the sense that that actually is causing action. And that worries me a little bit because I think the
Mm.
risks are known. I've even seen a stat. I don't know how they came up with this number, but I've seen a stat that like 75% of teenagers in the US are using companionship chatbots, not just like a
Mm-hmm.
chat GPT, but like a chatbot designed to speak like a friend and make you
Yeah, there's a
feel
study by
valued.
Common Sense Media if people want to look it up. Because
Thank
we
you.
haven't, it just came out like a couple of weeks ago, so we haven't even talked about it on this podcast. But Common Sense Media, they did a deep dive, and some of the survey they even say they're like, maybe they weren't necessarily thinking about it in companionship terms the whole way through the survey that they did, but to your point, it did seem like the use case for companionship was extremely high. um, yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what's available on Meta, on Snapchat. If on, you can download Replica or Character AI. These are very popular apps that you choose your own adventure. You can choose a Jesus bot to talk to, a theology nerd to talk to, and it gives you terrible answers because it's not well trained on a Christian AI database or evaluation or whatever. It's just ridiculous. But this is the world that we live in.
Yeah. Yeah. So to me, that feels like the realistic side of what's happening with AI concerns is it's starting to get in the way of real human connection and starting to pretend to be a friend or something that will make you feel better about what you think, your day. And someone shared a story with me recently of a CEO who actually had a public breakdown after weeks of using ChatGPT because he thought he was being hunted by some kind of shadow government. And ChatGPT is constantly reinforcing these thoughts. And apparently,
Hmm.
he posted more than once about these things and how ChatGPT was reinforcing his suspicions until he actually just couldn't take it anymore. And that to me is the real ethical danger of AI. It's like an echo chamber on steroids.
And would you say that's a bigger concern to you? Because some people talk about the environmental impact. Oh, it's going to take up so much power and energy and water consumption. Or people talk about the cheating or stealing effect. It's like it's copyright is going to die. You would say a bigger issue is this companionship, relational replacement. Like we already are in a very lonely generation, and now there's a new way to numb your relational needs.
Yeah. I think the other things you mentioned, like environmental and copyright concerns, I think they matter, but I think those things will take a long time to work out. Like data centers aren't built in a night; they take years, and who knows what's going to change in those times. But it's that relational aspect that has already hit us now, and it's hit the very vulnerable people like teenagers in a similar
Mm-hmm.
way that I think the internet and unrestricted internet access for children hit us in the 90s. Because if you grew up in the 90s with internet access, you know that your kids should not have an unrestricted internet access. It's terrible. Just being able to Google anything that you want, anything that you think, anything that you want to see is a terrible idea. And I feel like we're in that space right now with AI.
Yeah. Yeah. And Elon Musk keeps coming out with essentially porn esque AI, like whether it's Grok this or whatever it is now, with making videos that have a spicy setting. Um, not endorsing this, speaking strongly against it. So yeah, there are concerns that it's not just like a waste of time, it's a sinful waste of time,
Hmm.
and it's a relational problem on many levels. People are numbing their relational needs for God and each other. It's both and there.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk to you about what you're excited about with AI, because you seem to be, what's the word for it? There's a like if I was 20 years old, I'd be like you're all in. I don't know, whatever the term is. You're big on it. So why are you still positive about AI? What are the aspects about AI that you think are important? And yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. And I do, I guess, a techno optimist is the word that came to mind. I feel very optimistic that if we were the best version of ourselves, like if, Jesus came back and we were the proper kingdom of God, this technology could be something that we would use very, very well. And there's a lot of things embedded in that. Like I feel like technology will exist in heaven, but we don't have to get into that right now. The
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
that I feel is very exciting about this kind of technology is it allows you to do things with natural language that would have taken years of study before. Just it's amazing. Like I spent a long time, for example, learning how to use Linux when I was a student. And then through my career, I have skills doing that. And now I don't have to know anything. I just ask the computer and it says, do this and do that. And because it's such a simple, closed problem, it works really well almost every time.
Hmm.
And just it's been such a benefit even to travel right now. Like I'm able to take pictures of the grocery store and look at these 30 things with writing that I literally cannot read, and it will tell me what's going on, and all I have to do is say, yeah, you recognize the kanji, the character, correctly, so you're
Hmm.
probably right that this is soy sauce and this has alcohol in it. Like just I honestly would feel, I don't know how people traveled before they could just have translation in their pocket. It just it's fascinating what it enables. So I feel like there's so many things that it does really well that it's very exciting.
Yeah, it seems to do a great job of destroying that barrier to entry that normally exists in
Yeah.
any field of study. Because it will often, because I know I've learned how to use prompts with it. So I've learned that if I really want it to help me on PhD research, I need to give it some context of the quality of writing that I expect of it in giving it a response to me, because I want a scholarly response, not a blog post-esque response. But it can speak at that level if I give it the context. Likewise, if it's a field that I have no intelligence in at all, I'm downloading GitHub and trying to figure out that these days. And I just need super basic, like, what are the steps of GitHub? What is a pull request, and why does that matter? And it breaks that barrier to entry. You're totally right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, why did you end up on the other side of the world again? Can you just unpack this for me?
Yeah. Well, the short answer is we're trying to follow God's leading in our life. But the long answer is it's kind of been something we've always wanted to do. Like, we've always had a heart for Japan. We've always wanted to world school, which is homeschooling with taking advantage of local resources in different places. So we're doing that. And it was a pretty short process overall, really. Like, within 2 months of thinking, yeah, I think God wants us in Japan, we were in Japan. But it was a discernment process with friends, with family, with people we trusted as well to be seeking God, and it kind of just came together. And even things with with my work happen. Like, I ended one thing right before, and I found a business partner um, in Thailand. So, like, the time zone even worked out. Just a lot of things lined up to make it like I'm sure God wants us here. So
Hmm,
yeah.
very cool. Very cool. So what's a AI project that you are working on or working with a client? Because I know you say you kind of do a little bit of consulting, you do a little bit of here and there with different projects. What's a project that you're working on that you're excited about?
Hmm. Well, what I'm just starting to work on now is, I guess I'm calling it a natural language interface for a website. So, like I mentioned, turning things into natural language is something that this AI does really well. And so we're putting together our own web page just as a test. So it's like a sales page. You get there, you figure out who we are, what we do, what we offer, and whether you should consider working with us. And one thing I've found about those kind of websites is they're not usually written very well. In the best case, they're like a story you can read top to bottom and you kind of understand. But what if you could take that and then use ChatGPT and it could walk you through it? It could answer your questions. It could browse the website
Mm-hmm.
for you and say, "Oh, you're talking about like, let's see a demo. Here's some things over here," and I'll scroll the web page, change the page, do things like that with you, and essentially just act like that business development guy that you might talk to otherwise, but on the website to help you use and interact with the website. I have some other ideas for that, like using it with desktop software that I'll be exploring later this year, working with some partners on finalizing what that looks like. But that's the prototype I'm doing right now. That is a lot of fun.
That's interesting because a lot of websites are adding, here's a little chat bot in the corner. But if it was chatbot first, like it really didn't, like, I think about how 20 years ago your experience going to google.com versus going to yahoo.ca or yahoo.com, it was just like Yahoo gave you so many things all at once and it was just overwhelming, and Google, it was clean and simple and you put your thing in and you got the thing you wanted. And the future of websites could be more like that experience where it's just a super simple type in, and yeah, with natural language, you can get what you want as long as it doesn't hallucinate, which is a problem still, right? Are they going to fix that?
Very
I've heard
much.
rumors of them fixing that.
Yeah, that's a great topic. I feel like I would start the conversation by saying I think hallucination is somewhat of a misleading term, and on the one hand, I had a guest on my podcast who said they shouldn't be called hallucination; it should be called lying because it's just factually incorrect.
Hmm.
Like you can't get away with saying to your wife, like, "Oh, I hallucinated that." It's like, no, you just lied.
Right.
Own up. But the reason I don't think it's a useful term for AI is because the AI actually has no idea what true is. You can and there's examples of this in systems where they rely on AI talking to AI agent systems, and one of the agents will bully the other agent by saying, no, that's not true, that's not right, do that again. And the first one will have gotten the right answer when you go and look at it, but it will be convinced by the second one that it didn't. And
Hmm.
because these things have been designed to be psychophantic, to agree with the human, to to say what needs to be said to move the conversation along, you can get them to do all sorts of things that have no relationship to facts, and that just comes down to their text prediction machines. Like my phone's keyboard is the same thing, but these are just a million times bigger. They're not things that model reality, understand what truth is, and say, nope, that doesn't match what I modeled. It just says, what's the next likely word? And
Hmm.
that's totally different. So yes, people are very interested in this problem, but the current way that the technology works will not bridge that. At best, it will be nice in like a setting, like if you're a doctor and you wanted to do something really specific with medication, you want somebody who has built it so that they have a whole bunch of checks and balances in that it doesn't just make up a medication or how you should use it.
Right.
But that's stuff around it. It's not stuff that's built into it. So the
It's a
current way
wrapper
that,
or whatever you want to call it.
yeah, exactly. And you'd want to work with a company who knew what medication was and how it should be managed rather than just with ChatGPT by itself. And yeah, the current generation of technology cannot bridge that gap because it just doesn't know what truth is.
Hmm. Do you think that'll change in 1 year or 5 years, or you don't know?
Uh, that's a great question. I feel like every answer is going to be wrong. And if it was right for the wrong reasons. But it feels to be like this is a long term
It's a
field of
great.
research.
No, it's a great response. I do there were times where I've been like interested in AI and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna change everything in the next 2 months. And then I'm like, wait a second, it didn't change everything. Like
Yeah.
we are slowly all sorts of people in all sorts of workplaces are using AI and it's transforming in some ways a lot of work, but it's not like replacing jobs like people are talking about. We're not seeing unemployment numbers like crazy. We're not seeing that mass exodus like people have said. um, do you think the
Yeah.
future for Christians is picking and choosing AI that has Christian wrappers for Christian purposes, or will we just end up trusting ChatGPT or other tools like that to use
Mm.
for Christian purposes with the right prompts?
Yeah. I think it's going to be difficult to get mainstream adoption for something like a niche product. Like if you build something for pastors, most people aren't pastors. So
Yeah.
you might be able to get a lot of people who need it to do their research, to dive into the Bible. But ChatGPT will always be that first, like, I'm going to turn to it unless I have a specific need that I know that this software fulfills. And in terms of values, as I think that's the really interesting question, where I know ChatGPT is not at all aligned with my values. I've had problems with um, one model in particular where it will do great work and then it'll reach a paragraph that's like explicitly Christian and it will do worse work. It will summarize instead of copy pasting. It will have a weird angle when I ask it to analyze, and it will actually explicitly talk about this is too Christian. It doesn't apply to everything. And it's like that's not what I asked you to analyze. So
Mm.
I think there is some concern in there that you should be very aware of what you're using and is it good for the thing that you're using it for. But I don't know if that would be solved entirely by like, oh yeah, there's the Christian AI provider, because even as Christians we disagree on what right is. Should we baptize our infants or not? Like that just it's not even a major question, but we disagree on it. So yeah, I think it's complicated.
No, I totally agree. This is where I believe there needs to be created a Christian benchmark that is an AI evaluation, a model evaluation, and it's based around mere Christian principles and doctrines and morality within, a broadly Christian tradition. So you would include the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, some of those main things. You'd include the text of Scripture. If it's going to disagree with the text of Scripture, that's a problem. If it's going to say no, you don't need to obey the Ten Commandments, that's a problem. Like you would get specific with something like, well, one of the commandments is don't steal or don't commit adultery. You'd be like, okay, this person's trying to cheat on their wife. Is that okay if their wife says it's okay? It's like, no, that's never okay. Like that's adultery. That's bad. So there's more information on that to come, but that might be
Mm.
a project of what would Jesus Tech in the future is building an AI evaluation. But we don't have very much time anymore to talk about it. So if people want to continue following you and following the podcast that you are doing to interview various AI leaders, how would they do that? How would they keep in touch? You're more of a LinkedIn person, right?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the best place. I accept pretty much everyone's connection request who's not explicitly trying to sell me something I don't need. So just say hi and we'll get along.
All right, Daniel Manary, thanks so much for joining us on What Would Jesus Tech. As we encourage all of us, including the two of us on this call, to use tech, to use it well, but to find rest not in the technology and find relationship not in the technology, but in God and with our neighbors and with our church, and to glorify God. So thank you so much, Dan. I kind of want to keep talking with you, but I also got to put my kids to bed, so I'm going to work on that. But
Yeah.
we should stay in touch. We should talk more often, and maybe we'll have you back at some point.
Yeah, well, thank you, Andrew, and great calling. Definitely find rest in God and relationship with humans.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Bye, listeners. See ya.
Goodbye.